What's up, everybody? What's going on, man? Y'all ready for this debate? Let's get it. All right, let's get it. Let's get into this debate. Sorry, y'all, for the wait. That's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say that's facts. That's facts. That's facts.
They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. "Thank you, President Xi," exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, "I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks." But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. Nah. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up with the federal government.
Yeah, it should be in the state's hands.
I did a great service in
doing it. It should definitely be in the state's hands.
And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said,
no, he didn't say there was. He said that they're trying to do that.
A surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans.
Yo,
which
what up,
make
Brad?
it
Shout out, Breadwinner.
criminal for a
out,
doctor or
Breadwinner
nurse
TV.
to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest,
Yeah, this is
being
her.
forced to carry a pregnancy
This
to term.
This is her stick
They
right
don't
here.
want that.
This is her stick.
And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the
This is
United
her
States,
stick
I
right
will
here.
proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor.
I love how
that
she
would be
keep calling
monitoring
it
your
his project.
pregnancies,
That's not
your
his project.
miscarriages. I think the American
Project
people
2025 is not
believe
Trump's.
that certain
He's already
freedoms,
he's already
in
condemned
particular,
Project
the freedom to
2025.
make decisions about one's own body should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well,
to
I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned,
this is her issue right here.
In America,
this is her issue.
Is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers.
You got to do that.
To go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I have to respond.
Okay, if that's the case, then in the states
It's another lie.
that
I
is
have been a
illegal,
leader on IVF,
they will bring it back.
which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you answer that question?
Why don't you answer the
Yeah,
question?
yeah, he ain't answering it. She ain't answering it.
You could do
She ain't
abortions
answering.
in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably
She
after
ain't
birth.
answering.
Just look at the governor, former governor
didn't say no.
of Virginia. The governor of Virginia
did not
said
say
we
no.
put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say
Like the
that
video,
the United
everybody.
States Congress, including some of the most
Like the
conservative
video,
members of the
subscribe.
United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so
Watch,
many
she gonna
families
blame Trump.
watching tonight.
She gonna
who've been
blame Trump, who's
personally
not even in
affected
power.
by the surge
This
of
nigga's
fentanyl
not even
our
in power.
country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
I love
Why did you try to kill that bill,
political
and
talking
successfully
points.
so? That would have put thousands of additional
That shit
agents and
hilarious.
officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there.
That's funny.
And then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
Facts.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying
manager.
their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
There's literally an article that says they're doing that.
You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain.
That's actually bad,
including
bro.
the endorsement of
that shows that the duopoly is real.
Dick Cheney and
the duopoly is real.
Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people, not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president, in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police.
Take that glass.
How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? like, will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah. It is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country.
That's true.
And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow, and I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in. And all over the world, crime is down. All over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
this niggas, man.
They were defrauding statements.
These capping ass niggas, bro.
They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts.
Wow.
So let's talk about what is important in this race.
Past.
It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent.
Absolutely.
And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal.
That's true.
And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened?
Like
in
literally,
what
the Biden administration is doing is illegal, bro. You're never supposed to prosecute your political enemies, bro.
A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump,
100%.
thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Yep.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly
Trump is getting
said
cooked, man.
he would terminate.
Yeah, but she using lies though to get at him though.
Of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice President
stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
Weaponized, please.
We got to
This is the
continue
one
here.
that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of
That's
the
true.
things that they say about
Damn right.
me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a
President
fake
Trump.
Russia investigation
We do have a lot
that
to get.
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings.
Finally,
Now
a hard
you're taking
question,
harder
bro.
line. I know you say that your
Damn.
values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States, and in fact, I was the
Finally,
tie-breaking vote
Colorado
on the
heard
Inflation
hypocrisy,
Reduction
bro.
Act,
Damn.
which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and
here come the-
saved and was able to
come the
buy our
sob story.
first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done. Protecting seniors from schools have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective
Hey, I ain't gonna lie,
that is
man.
about
She on Trump
lifting
shit, bro.
people up
I was
and not
with the
beating
cap, bro.
people down.
She on Trump noggin,
and
bro.
name-calling. The true measure of the leader
She on Trump
is
noggin,
the
bro.
leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well, first of
response.
all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars.
That's
many,
right, that's
many
right.
billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out.
That's
She went
funny.
out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison.
Yeah,
This
that's
is
crazy.
a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline.
Hell yeah.
So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
Maybe more, maybe more.
To get to,
Environment that
we're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsey, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically.
Ain't nothing wrong with that saying.
And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly.
Yeah,
I
that's
ask,
facts.
what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done.
Facts.
What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these
Damn right.
people from countries all over the world, not just South America, they're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle?
That's
they
facts.
went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
Yeah.
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what
That's
happened.
facts.
They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack
This shit is a
our
joke,
nation's
bro.
capital.
Literally,
to
only one
desecrate
person
our
died on
nation's
January
capital.
6th, bro.
On
They
that
try to
day,
make it seem like this shit is 9/11,
140
bro.
law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to
Facts.
stand
For sure she a liar.
for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards
Man,
to the past.
the FBI was literally planning the January 6th and allowed them to breach the Capitol. And that's a fact. That's proven.
They have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington,
Hey,
D.C.
Trump is funny,
and
bro.
let her sign a bill to close up the border.
Yep,
because
Trump
they have the
2024 all
right
day.
to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike
like the
J6.
video, everybody.
We talked immigration
Like
here
the
tonight.
video,
I do want
subscribe.
to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically. You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically.
Trump is a fool, man.
There's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically.
This is very true.
And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And said
they said
no
we didn't have standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The President of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, "We won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote." Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you.
Damn, they literally laughing at Biden. They're literally laughing at Biden.
And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because...
Your time
Shut up, Brad, man. Thanks for coming back, brother. Appreciate you, bro.
Turning to the Israel-Hamas
Welcome back,
war
man.
and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians.
Agreed.
You said that 9 months ago.
That's
now
facts.
An estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages
I think
remain.
more.
Just last
More
week,
than
Prime Minister
40,000.
Benjamin Netanyahu
It was
said
40. It
there's
was
not a deal
40,000 in the
making.
first
President
6
Biden
months.
has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas,
here come the history lesson.
a terrorist
Here
organization,
come the history lesson.
slaughtered 1,200 Israelis, many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will
Trump
continue
24,
to
baby.
work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution.
Bro, she's literally the vice president right now, and she could call for a ceasefire in Israel. Her and Joe Biden, but they keep funding Israel for this war. They perpetuating the innocent people that's being killed in Palestine. So anything that she say other than we didn't do anything is a lie.
It would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there.
Yeah.
But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one.
Exactly,
she
bro.
Hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population, because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
Let's go.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators.
Bro, he's weak on foreign policy when literally soon as you and Biden got into office,
that he said
2 wars. We ain't active in 2 wars within the first year.
He can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un, and it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on national security, including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security
by
allowing every nation last month for the year.
And the fact that they criticize him for having a good relationship with Russia, Putin, and Xi Jinping, and Kim Jong-un, you're supposed to. When you talk about nuclear war, nuclear power, you want to have a good relationship.
What he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline
like the video, everybody,
and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Shout out to Baby Cam for the follow. All right, man. I guess while we wait for that commercial break, let's kind of talk about it. Let's kind of talk about it, man. What's going on? Let's see. Let's mute this. Yeah, man. A very, very good debate so far. I will give a quick analysis about how I feel about the debate. I think that, honestly, Kamala's doing way better than what I thought, bro. Kamala's kind of cooking. She's kind of cooking. I ain't gonna lie. But I think a lot of the criticisms that they giving Trump are really like talking points. It's like left-wing talking points. Like, for example, the idea of like it being a bad thing that he has. I think it said, "Get her, Trump. Let's go." They make it seem like it's a bad thing for him to have a good relationship with these nuclear power nations like Putin and Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un. Why, if you're the leader of the free world and you should have a good relationship with these nuclear armed leaders? I think that's a good thing. It's not like he's trying to. Because again, the Russia collusion and all that shit that's been disproven, that's been debunked. It's false, and you want your leader to have a good relationship with these people, man. And literally under Joe Biden, Russia and China have been brought closer and closer together, and that is something that the U.S. does not need. It's in the best interest of the U.S. to have a good relationship with Russia and China rather than isolate themselves from Russia and China and then let Russia and China become allies. That is a terrible strategy, and under Joe Biden, that's what's been happening. Another thing, what was it that they brought up? The border. Literally since Joe Biden, Kamala and Joe Biden have literally, when Trump was in office, he was building the wall. We had a lot fewer immigrants coming into the country illegally, and don't believe the narrative that Trump don't want people to come here as migrants, bro. He's all for it. He just wants you to come here legally. You feel me? And literally under Trump, under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, there's been over reported 20 million immigrants from all around the world, not just South America. And look at what's happening in Colorado, man. They literally taking over apartment complexes and taking over cities and shit. It's happening in Detroit. It's happening in Chicago. Literally, the Chicago gangbangers are being threatened by the immigrants that are pouring in. So again, that's another failure by the administration. And I don't know, bro. I think they're using superficial arguments to get at Trump when at the end of the day, under Trump, the economy was in the best shape as ever was. We was building the border wall. We had a lot less illegal immigrants coming in here that are, again, violent criminals. You have to vet people before they come into your country. You have to vet them. They'll just let people walk through the front door while simultaneously having people who are waiting 5, 10, 15 years to get their citizenship here in America. Is just a disgrace. And I hope that they call Kamala out on her record in California, where she literally locked up over 1,200 black people for minor weed violations. And then when it was time to release them, she literally a court ordered her to release these nonviolent criminals, and she decided to keep them in jail for cheap California labor. Let's not forget that. And when it comes to the wars, literally, they don't talk about how literally when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, their literally first year in office, when Trump was in office, he had no additional wars, none. Joe Biden, Kamala get in, like literally within like the first month, Russia attacked Ukraine. First month, because they tried to induct Ukraine into NATO, and then literally a year later, then we got the Israel-Palestinian war. And then when they withdrew from Afghanistan, that was just a disgrace too. So I mean, look, the facts are clear, and let's get back to the debate, man.
And Donald Trump.
When it ends in just a few minutes, join us for an analysis of tonight's key moments. Our team will break down how it could shake up the final sprint to Election Day. For now, though, let's go back to the debate live in Philadelphia.
Live from the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here again, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back to this historic ABC News presidential debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for $250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They
says, show me the money, Trump. I don't care about nothing else.
How would you respect him? Why? For what
Facts,
reason?
Nigga.
He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin. Hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify,
they threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also, as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me.
Sorry, y'all.
I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided.
She's literally
Ukraine
defending a war right now.
As an independent and free country. If Donald Trump
she's literally making an excuse for the Ukraine war right now. Right now. She's a warmonger, bro. She's a fucking warmonger.
Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of
you.
She literally
defended
tonight.
the war, bro.
Afghanistan came
she
up in the last
hour. The Ukraine war right now.
I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier. And now, please.
Like literally, as soon as her and Biden got in office, the war started. If they wanted to take over Europe when President was Trump, they would have did it.
He would have been sitting in Moscow.
They did it when a weak president got into office, bro.
He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate.
She's basically saying we should go to war.
And
facts.
Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility.
The significance of the passage of time. I thought she was going to say
that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. Otherwise, we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result,
it was a terrible
America's
withdrawal.
taxpayers are not
Terrible
paying
withdrawal.
the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in
The
my
worst
opinion,
withdrawal
the
ever,
most
bro.
embarrassing moment in the
Fuck
history of
yeah.
our country. And
That's
by the
so
way,
true.
that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she
That's
and
facts.
her boss are.
President
That's
Trump,
facts.
thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something, I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up, Lindsay.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country, one who believes in what is possible.
Man, this fucking warmonger, bro.
A sense of optimism about what we can do.
Look, if we're going to have a female president, it should have been Tulsi Gabbard, bro.
The American
Straight
people.
Up.
I believe in what we can do to
she for healthcare,
strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have
not
a
this
plan.
fucking
Let's
elite
talk about
establishment
our plans
warmonger ass bitch.
And let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life, to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page.
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President Trump, we have to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy, please.
She has a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President
She
Trump,
has a plan
That's true.
to not allow fracking in
That's
Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's what her plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond because
Trump,
the
President
former
Trump.
president has
Now she wants to
sorry,
buy us
that
with
I need
money.
to respond
No,
to.
I'm sorry. We're going to move on,
respond
Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this is
multiple
now your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better.
Correct.
Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this. I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that, and you'll be hearing about it in the not-too-distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run health care system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Yeah,
well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff.
That's cap.
As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president, and we, over the last 4 years, have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed, for the first time, Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it.
Y'all been president for 3.5. Y'all been president for 4 years, bro.
To strengthen the Affordable Care Act.
Where's that plan?
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Biden been president for 4 years. Where's the plan, homie?
That's important for a lot.
You made a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? we can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. While I have been vice president,
so contradictive.
We have
How do you say you invest in clean energy, but also increase the
oil
production?
Factories around the
that
world.
is
Donald
counterproductive.
Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs.
That don't make no sense.
He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate.
All right, we got to talk about this, man. We got to talk about this. Damn. Hey, so look, let me mute this real quick.
After this.
Interesting. Honestly, bro, I'm gonna keep it a bean. Kamala kind of cooking. And I don't mean in the term of spitting facts, but she seems very passionate. She seems very convicted when she's making these, her statements, and she's, she just seemed very convicted in what she's saying. So it's kind of making her look like she actually saying shit, but she's just doing the typical political rhetoric of like, she will give a story of, are you guys when I was this age, and you know that typical political jargon, and I ain't gonna lie, like the average person that can't break down the policies and the facts that she's saying, and you just hear that story and say, oh my goodness, Kamala cares, then yeah, you gonna feed into it. So in that sense, like the average person is probably thinking that Kamala is winning this debate. But if you want to talk about like just like straight up like facts, like Donald Trump is spitting the facts, bro. Donald Trump is spitting the facts, and honestly, he making Kamala look silly. He making her look silly. But I will say that again, bro. Trump need to do a better job at it. Right now, Trump seems like he just kind of like, and I know he's going straight off of facts, but he need to kind of do like her, just for those people, those voters that's in the middle, that's looking at Kamala and how passionate she's, she look at the camera. He got to kind of get better at doing that, because people look at that shit and they're gonna be like, oh my goodness, Kamala's winning. But really, if you can read in between the lines and you don't get bamboozled by that, just again, political talking points and political, it's a political strategy, bro, to look into the camera, and they all do their finger like this. They all do that little finger. They do that and shit. Trump got to get on that shit, bro. I ain't gonna lie, bro. I ain't gonna lie. But I can't wait to see what a lot of political analysts have to say about this debate, man. It should be very interesting. Up next is the final thoughts of both candidates, and yeah, man, it's gonna be fascinating to see how they play this, man. How they play this out. Let me just go here real quick. Let me see. Yeah, man. So we'll see how it goes, man. Shout out to the 48 people watching on Twitter, man. That's fire, man. I got 48 people on Twitter. Good looking. Hey, look, by the way, if you're watching on Twitter, thank you. I'm gonna drop my YouTube channel in the chat. So if y'all don't mind, anybody that's on Twitter, come to YouTube, man, and subscribe to me on YouTube. It really means a lot to me that y'all do that, man. It's much love. It's going to be the Chucky Love Show. Y'all make sure y'all go over there on YouTube, man, and fuck with your boy, man. Fuck with your boy, Your boy out here trying to grow on all the platforms. And right now, YouTube is really, really where I want to get my followers up. So for the 48 people on Twitter, come over to YouTube, bro, and look out for your boy, man. Help your boy get his YouTube following up, man. But again, if you don't do that, that's fine too. Just thank you for watching in general. It really means a lot that y'all ain't here, man. Either way, one way or the other, as long as y'all watching me, that's fire, man. If you're on Twitter, sub to the YouTube channel. Facts, man. Shout out to Brad, man. Damn, bro, 48 people. That's love, bro. Yeah, man. Come to YouTube if you don't mind, man. If not, that's cool too. As long as you're watching, it means a lot. But yeah, much love, man. 30 seconds left, and we're gonna hear these final thoughts from Trump and Harris. And before we end, I'm gonna definitely kind of talk about it, and I want to see who y'all think won the debate. You know what I mean? I would love to get y'all opinion on everything. So let's get it, man.
We are here.
Now is real.
Let's break down what we know.
All right, hold up. Let me turn that off. All right, let's get it. We back.
We're back with tonight's debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump.
And when it ends, please join us for analysis of tonight's key moments. Our team will break it down. As we enter the final sprint to Election Day, we'll go back to the debate and closing statements.
Live from the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here again, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back tonight. The time has come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us, and we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military, and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first.
On a political level,
I intend to be a president for all Americans.
Like this is what people want to hear, bro.
On what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years.
I hope Trump can come with some shit like this, man.
By investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it?
Thank you.
She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it.
The Democrats still in power right now.
You believe in things that the American
Biden
people
is the
don't
president
believe in. You
right
believe
now.
in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan.
This nigga nose is running.
What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
You think they're going to shake hands?
And welcome back to NBC News coverage of the debate. Pick your
adjective.
All
righty, my people.
To begin, but it goes from there.
Let's talk about
Both
this.
the candidates, you could argue, executing on their strategy going in for Kamala Harris. That was to get under the former president's skin, which she did quite.
Yeah, man. That's the debate. It says they're eating dogs and cats. Hey, look, I was watching this YouTube channel earlier, and I don't know if it's happening enough for Trump to like say it during the debate, but that shit is happening, bro. That shit is happening. I mean, it is, bro. It's just not as prevalent as they try to make it seem. So, but I just want to make that clear. But yeah, man. Honestly, bro. Look, man. I think Kamala might have won the debate, bro. Shout out to Player Bird. I don't know about that, bro. I think Kamala might have won, man. Look again. In my eyes, I think Trump won, right? Like, but my opinion doesn't matter. What matters is there's some niggas that are gonna look at this debate and they gonna say Trump won no matter what. There's some people that's gonna look at this debate and they're gonna say Kamala won no matter what, right? And that's where we get the 50-50 split. Me, I'm thinking it's those group of people in the middle that are gonna dictate who actually won this debate. And I think because of the conviction and the passion and the political jargon that because people like that shit. Unfortunately, that shit goes through one ear and out the other for me. But there's still a gang of people out there that they hear that and they buy it. They buy it, and it's those people in the middle. They buy all that positive talking and slick talking that Kamala doing, using big words, and they buy all that shit. You feel me? It says she won the debate as far as speaking politically correct. Trump isn't a good debater. LOL, he debates like a businessman, not like a political figure. Yeah, I agree. That's 100% facts. That's 100% facts. I think for Trump, he just more or less like he's going to tell you his track record and what he did, and he gonna tell you that, and unfortunately he don't do it in a way that's gonna like if you heard Trump speak for the first time, you wouldn't think he was a politician. And I mean, that's a good thing, but some people, they want that. Unfortunately, they want that look into the camera, that dumbass finger shit that they do when they talking. You know what I'm saying? That they do that shit like that. They do that all the time when they talking. People like that shit, bro. So in my eyes, Trump won because Trump he pointed out all of the terrible policies that the Biden and Harris administration has done. He pointed out the failed border. He pointed out the excess warmongering. He pointed out all the failures of the Biden and Harris administration, and I think he did so fairly. With Kamala just more or less just gave these hyperbolic storytelling, political narrative shit that you're just gonna, oh my god, like almost like with Obama. He made you feel good, but he wasn't really saying shit. And I feel like she ain't as good a speaker as Obama, but she obviously used her vast vocabulary to make people think that she's actually saying something, but really she wasn't saying shit. Exactly. What, bro? Bro, thank you, bro. Harris clearly wants to go to war. I'm not with that. Absolutely. Damn right she's with the wars and shit, bro. She with all that shit. She with all that, bro. All the war. Look, man. There's not one war that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, if the shit came across, if there was opportunity for, I ain't gonna say American soldiers because that's like political suicide when you get Americans involved in wars. But when it comes to, because again, America got influence to prevent wars, bro. Like we do. That's just a fact. We got enough influence in America to either prevent or provoke wars. We just do. And if there is an opportunity for Joe Biden and Harris to prevent a war, they're not gonna do it. They're gonna take a full advantage of that because they're funded by the military industrial complex, and whenever we go to war, we sign these billion-dollar weapons deals. The military industrial complex they got no bid contracts on these weapons that they're providing to the government. And don't think these guns is cheap, bro. Don't think these weapons are cheap. I'm talking about it's no bid. So that means these companies that the American government are doing business with can charge anything they want, and the U.S. government is going to buy it because there's no negotiating. Like, think about this. Imagine you sell furniture and you have a contract with somebody that no matter the price of your furniture, they're going to buy it. Hey, that $1,000 couch right there, that's 20 racks. That $1,000 couch that I would normally sell to everybody else, that's a $20,000 couch now. And they going to write it with a blank fucking check. And these are the same people that funds Joe Biden, that funds Kamala Harris, and that's why these wars are endless. There's endless wars. Trump don't need their bread. That's why when he was in office, there was no new wars, because there's no incentive for him to go to war when his pockets is already lined up. So again, that's my big issue with the elite establishment politicians, not even just on the left. Just in general, it's right-wing motherfuckers that's on the same timing, that if there's a war that come across their desk and they in power, let's do it. They gonna do it. They never gonna fight against it. They're never gonna. We gave Ukraine, like, I think at this point like $150 billion, bro, in weapons. I think Israel got maybe like 40-something, 50-something billion dollars from us. Like, we just printing, bro. $20 billion will end homelessness in America. The $200 billion that they sent Ukraine and Palestine, Israel, that will literally end homelessness in America for about 10 years. They sent 10 years of homelessness away. They sent it away like it was nothing, and didn't even think about putting that money here. We still don't got free health care. And again, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is supposed to be for a public option, at minimum a public option. Still don't have that. And honestly, I'm just disappointed in the administration, the Biden and Harris administration. Hopefully, people can see through the political jargon that Kamala was spitting, and see through the bullshit and just go based off of policies. But at this point in time, I'm convinced that people are just, they only want to vote for you if you have there's a handful of people out there that if you're a female, they'll vote for you just so we can say we have the first female president. They don't give a damn about the policies. Same thing with when it comes to a black candidate. Oh, they're black, I'll vote for you just because I want to see the first black president, but have nothing to do with the policies. That's why we got fooled by Obama. I was one of them too. I was on that, oh shit, nigga, first black president, let's go. And then this motherfucker kept perpetuating these wars. He bailed out the banks. He bombed the shit out of all these countries and shit. And then I'm like, oh, damn, we fucked up, bro. He the same. They just chose a black person to do it, but he the same as everybody else, bro. Harris is losing this election. That's a fact, man. I hope so, bro. I hope so, man. But yeah, man, let me see. I won't end the live just yet. I'm gonna go tap in with some of my there's some political people that I follow, and I want to hear what they got to say. It says Kamala is not it. Kamala just capped. All right, let's see. This is a channel that I follow. It's called PBD Podcast, and they are political experts, and they're unbiased, and we're going to hear what they got to say about the debate. Let's go.
You're saying this Kamala beats that Biden?
Based on policy and performance, she'd stand a chance.
Let me ask you guys a question. What do you say? Let me ask you. I'm going to ask the question. I want you to make noise. It's pretty tough to make noise for this, but how about we do hands instead of making noise, right? How many guys say the 2020 Biden beats the 2024 Kamala of today's performance? Raise your hand. Okay, how many guys, by the way, look at that. It's not a lot of you. How many of you say tonight's Kamala performance? Guys, this is kind of like the 2006 Michael Jordan against, you understand, when you're putting players against players. Does Kamala Harris, today's Kamala Harris, does she beat 2020 Biden? Put your hands up. Yeah. That's formidable. Sure. That's the part you have to pay attention to, okay, with what just happened there. Now, we don't even ask the question, does today's Kamala beat the Trump-Biden debate that just took place, whatever, 2 months ago? The answer's going to be what? It's not even a question.
Subscribe to the channel,
so
Bush 21, if you don't mind. Subscribe to the channel.
Here's what happened here. So to me, if I can read this tweet, Tom, Rob, I don't know if you can get on this screen. Okay, there you go. So tonight's commentary versus Biden-Trump debate, Tapper Dana Bash interrupted Trump 0 times. I remember I counted exactly how many times, not one time. Tonight, we counted it 11 times. It was a 3-1 debate. Kamala did her best to agitate and try to get under Trump's skin, which, by the way, she did. She did multiple times. She brought up Project 2025, even though they know, and moderator never corrected. She claimed he was terminated Constitution. Moderator never corrected. Misusing bloodbath, Charlottesville, J6. He wants to be a dictator on day one. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment, the worst pandemic. These are very good lines to get under his skin. Very effective. Trump followed through to do the same thing. She said they left the tariffs that Trump left on China for 3.5 years, meaning you followed my lead. She hates Israel. He said that, even though Dems have 71% of Jews are voting for Democrats. Just so you know, it's a very small percentage of Jews voting Republican. She doesn't have a plan. It's like 4 sentences, okay? I was going to send her a MAGA hat. Her father's a Marxist. He taught her well. These are very good lines. Her vice president pick, abortion in the 9th month. Her boss, Tom, can't read it. He spends most of his time at the beach. These are great lines. They didn't fire anyone. That's the most important point for me as an executive. How the hell do you not fire anybody? All this stuff that's happened last 4 years, you've never fired anybody? That's like the first thing the person should say. That's a good point. You have the toughest job. You don't want to fire anyone. Then it continues. I'm sorry. I'm talking now. So he did to her what she does. She is Joe Biden. You know, this is crooked, right? And then it goes to her highlight of the evening, abortion topics. I thought she crushed it. The economy. Yeah. When you listen to her with the economy, honestly, you know what it sounded like? How many guys don't like math? Raise your hand if you can't stand math. Raise your hand if you're not a math person. How many people know what happens when a math person is in a math conversation and math comes up and the economy comes? I mean, you kind of like, please don't ask me a question, bro. I swear to God, I'm begging you, don't. I still don't know what a 4. Don't ask me what a 403B is, 457. Don't ask me unrealized gains. Please, let's skip this topic. She knew nothing about the economy. Okay, she never. Maybe I thought for that moment when she claimed she smoked weed, she did in the economy class. That's when I realized maybe she did. I think she was telling the truth then. His highlights, economy, Rob, if you can go a little higher. His track record with no war when he was president. He challenged her to leave the debate stage and go to D.C. to sign a bill to say the border is closed.
Right. Damn right.
His downfall, eating dogs. That part, I think his team could have done a better job. I thought I was, and also getting a little bit agitated at the end and trying to oversell thinking is behind. Showed a little bit of, little bit of weakness at the end. So biggest marketing mistake of the night to me was Kamala when she said, I invite you to go to one of Trump's rallies. Please leave the rally. If people leave the rally early, Trump's marketing team is going to use us. Even Kamala Harris wants you to come to the rally, right?
Right.
Even though he doesn't need that. Trump's marketing team can run with that. Last observation about the debate. Kamala kept looking at him. He looked straight. He was focused. When they asked about the moderators, when they asked if Kamala has met Putin, they never once followed up on the question.
Yeah.
They never once followed. Why do you not follow up on the question? They followed up on Trump 3 times on a question. Why? The people want to know. By the way, what do you think the answer is if she's ever met Putin?
No.
If the answer was yes, what does she say within the first second?
Of course.
She said, I've met, who did she say she met 5 times?
Zelensky 5 times.
I've met Zelensky 5 times. Meeting Zelensky 5 times doesn't equate meeting Putin 1 time.
Facts.
Say yes or no. We still don't know the answer to the question. That was a bad thing for moderators. Even though they interrupted Trump consistently, they did better than expected. I thought David Muir, believe it or not, I actually like this guy on the way he did it. I thought he was good. I know a couple of times when Trump wanted to get the minute and they were trying to digress to a different topic or change to a different topic, David gave him the minute. I like that. He didn't seem like an asshole. That's my read. I liked him. Lindsey Davis asked one of the toughest questions of the night of Kamala. Even though you can tell she does not like Trump, I give her a 7. For whatever reason, it seemed like she was gone for 20 to 30 minutes. I don't know if that was an ABC thing or not, but that was definitely weird. So, again, Kamala sounded like a condescending aunt lecturing kids. He sounded like an angry patriot defending his nation. Either way, I think this was a much better debate performance-wise than the Biden-Trump for entertainment purposes, for fight, for all this other stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I thought it was good. But to go back to it. So somebody may say, well, Pat, the question you're asking about, will the 2020 Biden beat today's Kamala? The answer resounding is what?
Probably
no.
Yes.
No. Hang on, Adam. Will the 2020 Biden beat today's Kamala?
No.
Oh, no.
All of you said no.
No.
Correct. Okay.
Correct.
So then the next question is 2024, because it's games, it's opponents, styles, all that stuff, right? Then it's markets and conditions. Is today's market conditions the same as it was in 2020? Meaning, at that time, everybody was saying, man, I know what Trump's going to do, but I have no clue what Biden's going to do. Maybe he's going to be nicer.
Yeah.
Maybe America's going to be more peaceful. Maybe we're going to have less protesting with riots, right?
Yeah.
The difference here, that is nothing close to 2020, and the argument of whether Biden or Kamala beats who is irrelevant. We have 4 years almost of Biden and Kamala.
Yeah.
That is the biggest difference. And you put 4 to 4, it is not even close.
Mm-hmm.
The 4 to 4 of results with a resume, you have 2 people applying for a job, okay?
Mm-hmm.
What are some signs, Tom? If you're interviewing, we interview hundreds of people per year, right?
Yep.
Executive, people that we're hiring for $200,000 salaries, $300,000 salaries, 100K, 50K, 80K. You got 2 finalists as candidates. Resume. What things do you look for and you're like, nah, this is not for us? What do we look for?
I just look at effectiveness and results. You have some people's resumes said, I was part of this team, I was part of that team. You have other people turn in resumes, I raised the growth of the company by 6%. I raised profit by 15%. I found 22 new customers. Go like that. If you put them side by side on the economy, Biden doesn't want the numbers, and they have to shade. because those are bounce back jobs. Those were bounce back jobs. So if you look Trump on the economy and inflation, job creation, the foreign policy where the wars were and what they spent, and you went down by that, you would say.
Can I ask you a different question, though, Tom?
This is the strongest guy.
Let me ask you a different question. By the way, just so everybody knows, outside of ABC,
all right, man, I think I'm out of here, man.
Live tonight, we're officially
the
biggest live in the world. I want to tell you guys how thankful I am for just so you guys know that. All right, just so you guys know that.
So appreciate everybody for watching. I think I'm gonna end it, man. We covered the debate. Let me know who y'all think won in the comment section. I would love to know where everybody's brain is. This was a great debate. It was a fun debate, entertaining. Definitely, like he said, definitely better than Biden and Trump debate, man. And it was interesting. Kamala did a good job, bro. I'm not gonna lie. She performed way better than what I thought she would. I thought she would do a lot of laughing and not answering questions, but I thought she held her own, to be honest. Again, even though a lot of what she was saying was just like a lot of irrelevant talking points just to kind of feel the air. So, that's just that's the name of the game. She's a politician at the end of the day, a lifelong politician. So what do you expect? I think anybody else aside from Trump that's just how they do it in politics. I think Trump won. I'm sure some people probably think otherwise. Kamala did good. And that's pretty much it, man. I hope you guys enjoyed the live stream today. Make sure you guys like the video. You comment on the video. The merch is still for sale. You can tap in with the merch. Shout out to Breadwinner TV for being in the chat and always showing love. Make sure y'all go over there and subscribe to him. And everybody that's watching on Twitter, man, thank you, man. I'm on YouTube at the Chucky Love Show. You could type that in on YouTube. It's the CHUCKYLUV show. Make sure y'all go in there and tap in with that. You can follow me on Instagram and pretty much everything else at Squadcast TV. And I appreciate you guys, man. Much love. Take care. Be safe. And good night, man.